Hi guys, welcome back. Now we're going to start on the basic setup portion of how do we use Ruby on Rails. And in this case, I will be running through whatever Philip did in the last lesson step by step and explaining them each as an individual step. Alright, so for the first part, you have the installation of Ruby. So if you can recall, this was the first step that you did, which was to check the version number of Ruby. So this is also basically telling you whether you have Ruby installed in your IDE or not, because if you don't even have Ruby in the first place, the version number will not appear. The second step will be to update all your security updates and bug fixes with this command, and then the next step would be to install Ruby. So you may be asking, what is sudo yum? I did a Google search, and this is what sudo yum stands for. Sudo stands for super user do, and it is basically a program for Unix-like computer operating systems, like the one used in our Cloud IDE, and it allows users to run the programs as if he had the security privileges of another user. And this guy is by default the super user. You don't really need to know this, but why there's a concept of super user and just a normal user would be because in AWS Cloud9, usually a team of web development professionals would be using one singular account, but under each account they would have different IAMs, which would be different IDs. So even though they could log in into the same account, they were using different IDs. And depending on their role in the web development framework, they would have different security privileges. So perhaps the front-end coder would not be able to access whatever the backend is doing. And whoever dictates this is basically the super user, or basically the manager of the project. And this manager is also called the root user, and he's basically the person who created the account in the first place. So by saying sudo, you're basically saying you're assuming the role of the root user, and whatever the root user or your manager, whatever security privileges he has, you now have it. So you can do almost whatever you want. Yum, which is the follow-up to sudo, stands for yellow dog updater modified. What it is, it's an open source command line as well as a graphical based package management tool, and all of this is based on the Linux system, which is basically the OS that we're using for the Cloud IDE. What it does, it allows users and the system administrator to easily install, update, remove, and search for software packages. So you're basically tapping into this software, Yum, to look for the latest updates and the latest versions of different software. So as you can see in step number 2, you're basically tapping into the security privileges of the super user, sudo, and tapping into Yum to look for the latest security updates. For the third step, you're basically saying now, also doing the same thing, but in the case of installing Ruby. So how this will look like would be basically, you're gonna run that code. I actually already have Ruby installed, so I don't have to, but for the sake of this tutorial, we are gonna run through with the other commands. So this one we will be updating, and then it's saying that, oh, okay, because I already did this step prior to this, so it's basically saying that no packages to work for the update. So the next step would be to install Ruby, but I already have Ruby, so yeah. Oh, oops, sorry. Sudo yum install Ruby. Yeah, it's going to tell me that I already have Ruby, so there's nothing to do. Alright, so moving on, the second step will be to install Rails. So this is going to be very easy. We are going to tap into Ruby gems to install Rails. So you're going to run the command gem, which is provided by the Ruby gem package manager, and it's going to assure a very easy installation of the software, which was promised by Ruby on Rails, as I explained in the first video. So what Ruby gems are, it's basically a package manager for Ruby. So it's kind of like this library with all the different libraries. And with this library, it picks out everything and manages the installation of the gems. And because for different libraries, they all can have different formats if they're not in the form of a gem. So a gem dictates what format these libraries will be, and you can actually access this to see all the different gems available, and there are a lot. So yeah, that's for installing Rails. We're gonna run through that. So we're gonna accept the gem and we are gonna install Rails. So yeah, now it has one gem installed. That's our Rails. And now we're gonna check if Rails has been installed. It should be. It's gonna tell me that, yeah, I have Rails 5.2.1. Moving on, we are going to create the application. So how this will look like, if you remember, the first command would be to ask Rails to run a new block. So Rails new is the command, so it will create all the necessary files and directories for your application. This command also automatically runs the bundle install command, which will basically install all the necessary gems that you need for your new block. And this will be according to whatever you have in your gem file, but I will be explaining that later, so you don't need to worry about this so much. Just remember that this automatically runs this. This part block is basically whatever name you want to give to your project, so it really can be anything in the world. The second part will be to access your block. You need to change your current working directory, which at this point is environment, to your new working directory, which is block. Otherwise, if you do any changes in this, it will not affect this at all, right? So basically cd is a Unix command line kind of code for navigating files and directories. This entire file system is it's responsible for managing information on your disk or your file manager. So everything is kind of stored in files, which are stored in directories, which are kind of like your folders in your file manager in whatever computer you have. And directories can also store other directories, as you can see, and this forms a little directory tree. So yeah, you can check out all the different command line commands to navigate files and directories. So yeah, that's that. And I'm gonna run, these two things. So we're gonna create a new block first. You can see these are all the things it created. Basically created this block. If you don't know how to read this, it's fine. It's basically saying created this folder with all these different things, right? And these are the things we're going to use. The next command would be, can't remember, right? So as you can see, we are still in the environment directory. So now we are gonna cd our block directory, which is under our environment directory, and you will know that you're in the right one when it says master. So you are in the master directory. So yeah, now that we got that sorted out, we're going to move on to the bundler, which was the bundle install command that I told you earlier. So what you're going to do first is to open your gem file with look at it through your text editor in your IDE, and you are going to add this particular gem to your gem file, which is the Rails_database gem. For a later lecture, we will be installing all these different libraries, the same libraries that you did in your front-end lectures. So the Rails database gem is basically a really cool function that allows you to look at your database in a very pretty manner. Otherwise, you just won't be able to see your database. You'll just have to imagine it in your head, I guess. But you'll be able to see it in this case, and you can actually edit it manually instead of typing code. So yeah, we will be using this later, so you'll be able to check it out. And after you add the gems to the gem file, you will run bundle install, which will basically run all the gems that's listed in your gem file, including this new one that you added, and it's going to install it as a bundle. So how this is going to look like, let's go to our gem file, which is this thing here. So as you can see, it's a line of text, and you're going to see all these things. Everything that is green is basically comments. It's basically explaining to you what each of these gems are. So it's basically saying, oh, Rails, this is your version number, and this is your gem, right? So it's saying, oh, bundle edge, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's basically explaining everything. To make it neater, you can delete all the comments, but that's not really necessary for now. We are just gonna add that gem here, right? Oops, Okay, gonna save that, and then we are gonna run bundle install. Oh, did I get it? Yeah. Okay. Still installing, so give it some time because I didn't install it fully just now. Before that, we are gonna go on, and this is the last part of the preparation, which is to run the Rails server to see that everything is working. And this will guide you through all the other processes. It's the same process for running the server each time, but this will basically set the run configuration so you don't have to set it later. So what you're gonna do, you're gonna right click on the run menu and then choose new run configuration. So this is it, new run configuration, right? So you have a little new terminal. That's gonna be your new run configuration thingy. In the terminal area, you're gonna choose the configuration name. Where is it? And you're gonna select, oh wait, this was the other one. You're gonna just basically write that, oh, it's a block. Yeah, just, you can name it anything you want, honestly. In the terminal area, you're gonna enter this particular line of code in the command field. So that's over here. Let me write that down first. Alright, I know this is kind of confusing, so I'm gonna explain what it does to you. So the reason for this is that after the recent Rails 4.2, after Rails 4.2 update, the default IP address, internet protocol address that the Rails server binds to show you your running application on the web browser, it binds to localhost or 127.0.0.1. So localhost basically is an IP address that loops you back loops back to your computer. So it's basically assuming that you are using a computer code right now, and it's gonna run run your program and loop it back to your computer. But the thing is, we are not using our own computer, and we are using a Cloud9 IDE instead, which is on the web browser. So what this will do instead is that it will attempt to go to your local computer instead of attempting to go to your Cloud IDE. So by doing that, it's basically giving the permission to your local computer, but not your Cloud IDE. So what this does instead, you're saying that Rails server, I want you to bind to the IP address of 0.0.0.0 instead of localhost. And 0.0 basically means that anybody can access the application, including you. So you don't have to use your local computer to access that. So just a little detail about what IP addresses are. An IP address, you can kind of imagine it as a C port. So your IP address is basically your boat identification number. Your port is like a C port. So a computer or program has to connect somewhere or something else on the internet via port. So imagine all the USB ports in your computer. So each port has, depending on the number, has specialized jobs or functions, and you can search this up online if you're interested. So port will be followed by your internet protocol number, which is kind of like your birth number for your boat. So which berth it's going to berth at. So it's a numerical label assigned to each device that's connected to the computer network, and it uses IP for your communication. So you combine it, you get a special ID for your boat. And in this case, we want anybody, we're saying that this particular address, anybody can port at it, right? So yeah, that's what the command does. Okay, let's check if it has finished. Oh, it's a lot of things. Okay, yeah, great. Bundle complete. So as you can see, let's install all these different things that basically everything here. You can see that it has installed Rails database. Pretty amazing. So now we're gonna run it now that we have everything here. But that's not everything you have to do. This is just step 3. We're gonna move on to the next step. From the terminal area, you're gonna choose CWD, which means current working directory, and then choose the block folder from your list. So it's basically this thing, and you're going to click this because you want it to access your project. And the next step will be from the terminal area and choosing the runner and then choosing shell command from the list if your your IDE automatically does not do this already. Because what happens is that if your runner, let's say it's Ruby or some other language that's not shell command, it's basically the language that you put in here, not here. So if that language is Ruby and not shell command, it basically won't run this command because this is written in shell command. So that's why we want to make sure that runner is shell command. If not, let's choose shell command, which is right here. Right? And the next one, you're just gonna click the run button, and then you're gonna choose menu, preview running application, and then in the browser window that appears, you're gonna click pop out into new window. So what this all is, preview running application. So now you've got this little window, but it's too small. So you're gonna click this little button, and then it will say, "Yay, you're on Rails." So yeah, that's And lastly, if you want to stop running the application, just go back to this and then click Control C. So it's a process that's set up with code. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Next up, we are going to check out what Ruby on Rails can do with a little video. Actually, you don't need to wait to check this out. You can access this few slides and then look at this Ruby on Rails demo, basically till 4:35. That's what we're going to be covering today. You can click on it and you can watch it on your own. So this is the end of part 2. Up next, we're going to learn how to use the MVC model.